I have a hard time knowing if I'm ungrateful or my parents are bad/abusive. I'm currently 16 and this is my first Reddit post I've ever made. It is almost 4 a.m. but I've been hesitant on writing this since 2 a.m. Last summer when one of my friends opened up to me about his past, he wanted to know about my past too, and that really got me thinking really hard. I knew I had stuff happen to me, but if I could ever consider myself as a victim of any kind. I'm not really sure how to start, but I'll try my best on remembering of my earliest memory. When I was in kindergarten, I was an only child and mom would drop me off to a babysitter for maybe 2 years I think. But suddenly we had someone who started to live with us, and it turns out to be my older sister that I never knew about since no one really told me. From then on my sister would be the one to take care of me while my parents are off to work. I like my sister and she was one of the reason why I became an artist, because she taught me. She even taught how to do math better and faster, and we would go out a lot, but exactly when or how, but slowly my mom would start yelling and hitting my sister with a stick or even just her hand for not doing house chores good enough. We would also sometimes be at my parents' workplace too, and I would see and hear mom yelling at my sister to help her in the kitchen. Both my parents are working in a restaurant, while mom would tell me to be out and inform her if there were any customers, and I would listen and did just that. From there on out all I would see is my mom just yelling, screaming, and hitting my sister over minor stuff. Both my parents are strict about us being in relationships, so when my mom found out that my sister was secretly dating someone, she instantly took her tablet, went to her Instagram and made a post and pretended to be my sister, wrote something about how much she's a slut, a whore, and a bad kid and stuff like that. I sat beside my mom while she wrote it and watched her do it. I did ask why she did it, and she told me that because my sister is a bad kid. Dad didn't really did anything about any of this. I don't remember what he was doing while all of this was happening, but I do remember both my parents would argue about my dad's alcohol and smoke addiction. It got too bad to the point I was both of them getting physical and eventually mom calling the police on him. Luckily nothing bad happened to dad, I think. Around when I was 9, my sister just couldn't take it anymore and made a decision on running away from home. I was absolutely crushed and begged her to stay, even tried making any excuses for her to not leave, but she made up her mind and told me to not tell anyone. Sorry, I didn't listen. Around evening when mom and dad haven't come home from work yet, she told me her last goodbye and hug and left. I would go to our room and cry until my parents came home and noticed I didn't came to greet them. Dad would ask if I was okay, but I pretended like I was fine and then passed out from exhaustion after crying all evening. From then on everything was pretty blurry. I would be at my parents' workplace at the weekends because mom didn't have anyone to look after me anymore. And I would look out for customers, like when she asked me and dad would ask me to wipe down the tables, and I would do just that. Because it has been a while now since my sister ran away, I would naturally start wanting to spend time with my parents. And would dad ask to come to the nearby mall to hang out, he did agree, but only to go back to work after 20 minutes of being there. Whenever I asked mom to play with me, she would always say that she's busy, so I eventually gave up on asking her and also slowly stopped asking dad too. Being in that workplace was absolutely depressing to me. I would spend my time wandering around alone. It felt incredibly lonely. I would also sometimes ask my mom to buy me a toy or something, and she would either say no, saying it's too expensive, or say that she'll buy it tomorrow, which she never did, and I slowly stopped asking her for stuff without feeling bad about wasting money. At home it wasn't much better. Ever since my sister left, I found myself playing alone much more often. I did ask my dad to play, but I got told to ask mom instead, and I did just that. I then went to my mom to play, but she told me to ask dad instead, but still get turned down by him. Even on his off day, he would still turn me down when I asked him to play while he was laying on the couch watching TV. There were times when he did agree, but only when mom nagged him to play with me. Sometimes when mom was talking to her friends, she would always compare me and my sister, saying how bad of a kid she was compared to me, who's more obedient, saying how bad of an influence my sister was to me. Eventually my parents lost their jobs, and while my mom was searching for a place to work at, my dad was pretty relaxed about the whole situation. Even went to gamble with his friends and get drunk, which only led to more arguing after he got back. At 10 years old, we then moved out because of my parents' work, and things were rough at first. My parents would still argue about my dad's alcoholism and smoking, and I would mainly hear them downstairs. Sometimes even about dad's gambling with his friends and arguing about financial issues. He even went and choked her right next to me. And both also did threat on getting a divorce. There were still times where I want my dad to play with me despite being turned down a ton in the past, but I tried again and got turned down again, and he only agreed after I complained to mom and she nagged him to. But one specific night I asked to play a card game with me just to get turned down while he was laying on the bed watching TV, and that was the moment I gave up asking him to play completely and played the card game alone with my plushies while crying in silence. I remember my mom used to comfort me when I was crying, but she quickly got mad and annoyed at me for crying and would yell at me to stop or say, "What are you crying for?" in an annoyed tone. That led to hold back my tears whenever she's in the same room, and made me hate crying and for being a crybaby. I got teased for being a crybaby too in the past and I hated it too. Even to this day I absolutely hate crying around anyone or in public and would only do it when I'm completely alone. Dad didn't even do anything nor comforted me when he saw Mom telling me to stop it. At that age my mom wanted me to help her at work again, just like in the past. At first I wasn't against it and did just that, but slowly and surely I started to dislike it because I wanted to do more than just looking for customers, but she refused. But at least I'll get money out of it. I never really got an allowance growing up, so this was my only way of getting money. After a few years of helping her at work I started to just stop going there and helping her because of how much I hate being there. And after a while of not helping she would eventually start calling me lazy and a bad kid for not helping her at work. And that was also the time where I started to stop doing like family activities and stuff like playing board or cards game and whatnot with both of them. I realized that for Dad, TV is much more important, and for Mom, she's too tired from work to play with me, which also led me to not ask them for help either. Mom would say she's either too busy or tired and Dad is too incompetent without Mom. That went on for 2 years until I asked Mom to apply me for guitar and piano lesson, which she agreed, and about 2 years later I started to get bored of it and asked Mom if I can quit, which in reply she called me lazy. I tried talking to her multiple times and got called lazy every single time, so I stopped trying to communicate with her. Fast forward to now. I have completely stopped helping her at her workplace because it reminded me of the old place way too much and I hated how depressing and lonely it is. And also because it made me realize that most if not all of my memories where I spend time with my parents are at their workplace, which made me hate it even more because it wasn't even spending time with them, it was just about work and customers. I don't talk to my dad anymore and have been really cold to him. To this day he won't have a short talk with me because he's top focus on TV. Mom is still tired and busy from work, so I don't spend time with her either because it's useless if I'm going to get turned down over and over again. I feel absolutely numb, irritated and annoyed whenever I'm talking to them or even just being in the same room as them. Last year Mom complimented one of my friends for having the ability of cooking for himself, and that made me think that I am absolutely useless. I can't cook nor do laundry because I had no one to teach me anything at all. Mom's too busy and Dad's too focused on TV. I did ask Mom to teach me how to cook, but she replied she's too busy with work like every single time. She still calls me lazy for not helping her at work and asked me, "Don't you feel bad for me?" Which I didn't reply because it's hard for me to feel bad for her. I might just be petty or spoiled, but I really cannot feel bad for her because a part of me still holds the grudge that she's the reason my sister left. I remember one day having a panic attack over going to help her at work because she called me to go and help BR because there's a lot of customers. I got ready but started to get too anxious and scared, so I just sat on the floor in front of my door, crying. After a bit she came upstairs and called me a bad kid and lazy for not helping her and said that if she says to go help her then I have to go, so after I calmed down I told her I'll go tomorrow. That happened I think last summer. This year I don't know why, but she started to force me to go to school no matter what, even if I'm sick. She already did that in the past, but only with my music lesson, but never like this. She scolded me for staying home from school just because I was sick and told me that she still goes to work whether she's ill or feeling bad, like physically. Extra thing, but it if this normal parenting, but whenever I ask for something, anything, whether it's money or SMTH as simple as chopsticks or a bowl, I always have to say why I need it for. I get asking why I need money, but I don't really understand why she need to know why I need the bowl for. Lately it starts to piss me off whenever she asks, but I can never let her know or show it. But even after that I can't help but feel like I'm villainizing her because she does provide me clothes and cooks me food and cleans and checks up on me after work to make sure I'm not hungry or anything, and I do have a doctor to make sure I'm healthy. And she gives me my meds every day for me to get better physically. One day my doctor did tell her to get me a psychologist because of how little I was eating. Long story short, I don't have a psychologist, because she didn't believe there's anything wrong with me in the head. Also there's less arguing how, but Dad is still drinking behind her back and smoking, but Mom got too sick of arguing about the same thing, so she just played dumb. But in the other hand she also did all of those stuff in the past and it affected me a lot even to this day. Like I can't even buy anything without asking her, but even if she did say yes I start to doubt whether or not I actually want it without feeling like I'm wasting money on something useless. I also started to realize I need glasses. I'm too scared to ask her if I can have an eye doctor for my prescription and stuff because I don't want to be blamed for being on the phone too much while staying in the dark all day in my room. The really only thing I'm not guilty for buying without asking her foods and drinks really, because I know she wouldn't mind. That's probably about it. I'm not sure if talking about this made me feel better or worse, probably worse because I still feel like I'm blaming her too much and I'm just being ungrateful while she's trying her best to support the family and that she wants the best for me. Some of the stuff I wrote here is probably useless. It's pretty hard piecing the stuff happening together from the past because I don't remember anything in between that happened and the timelines that well. Thank you for your time reading this. Let me analyze this story for you. This is a profoundly raw and heartbreaking account of a young person trying to make sense of their upbringing, torn between feelings of guilt and deep emotional neglect. At just 16, the narrator is already carrying the kind of weight most adults spend years in therapy trying to unpack. What makes this story so difficult and so important is its honesty. It captures a universal conflict many children of dysfunctional or emotionally unavailable families face. Am I ungrateful for hurting? Or did they really hurt me? The story begins in confusion, not because the narrator isn't smart or observant, but because their childhood has been full of contradictions. On one hand, their mother provides basic needs, food, clothing, medication, and occasional check-ins. On the other hand, emotionally and mentally, the narrator has spent most of their life alone, invalidated, and feeling like a burden. That dissonance is exactly what makes this story so heavy. It's not physical abuse in the traditional sense, though there are instances of violence. It's emotional neglect, invalidation, manipulation, and a deeply ingrained pattern of dismissing feelings, needs, and the right to be a child. From a very young age, the narrator was forced into a role of emotional labor and self-sufficiency. They watched their mother verbally and physically abuse their sister, even go so far as to impersonate her online and publicly humiliate her, something the narrator witnessed firsthand. The sister's eventual decision to run away is a pivotal moment in the story. The narrator doesn't just lose a sibling, they lose their closest companion, their emotional anchor, and the only person who seemed to treat them with warmth. It's clear that the narrator was traumatized by this abandonment, even if they intellectually understood why she left. What they were left with afterward was isolation, emotional hunger, and a pair of parents who either couldn't or wouldn't be emotionally available. Their father is largely absent, not physically, but emotionally. He turns down their attempts to connect, even when they're desperate for affection. The image of a young child begging to play a simple card game and ending up in tears playing alone with plushies is devastating. It's not just rejection, it's an emotional wound that teaches the child that their needs, their joy, and their pain don't matter. Over time, those messages build up into internalized beliefs like, I'm annoying, I'm not worth time, I shouldn't ask for anything, and eventually, I'm ungrateful for even feeling sad about this. The mother's behavior is even more complicated. While she works hard and fulfills basic responsibilities, her approach to parenting is controlling, invalidating, and often cruel. She shames the narrator for crying, calling them lazy or selfish for expressing distress. She forces them to go to school sick, dismisses clear signs of anxiety and emotional breakdowns, and actively avoids addressing the narrator's mental health despite a doctor's recommendation. When she asks things like, "Don't you feel bad for me?" she's not just being manipulative, she's reversing roles. That's called parentification, where the child is expected to emotionally support the parent, instead of the other way around. It's an incredibly damaging dynamic because it makes the child feel guilty for having needs and feelings. The guilt the narrator expresses, worrying about being spoiled or ungrateful, is a direct result of this kind of parenting. They've been trained to believe that love is transactional. If she feeds me and gives me clothes, I owe her my silence. I owe her my pain. But the truth is, basic care is not the same as emotional care. Feeding a child doesn't excuse humiliating them. Giving medicine doesn't negate years of neglect. A parent is supposed to do more than just keep you alive, they are supposed to love you, guide you, comfort you, and see you. The narrator has learned not to ask for help, not to cry in front of others, not to take up space. Even simple needs, like asking for a bowl or admitting they need glasses, are laced with shame. That's not because the narrator is dramatic or ungrateful. It's because they've lived in an environment where every request is questioned, every emotion is punished, and where survival depends on staying small, quiet, and obedient. What makes this even more painful is the narrator's awareness of how much they've internalized these patterns. They recognize that they feel numb, irritated, and detached from their parents. That they don't speak to their father anymore. That their attempts to connect over the years were met with such consistent rejection that they gave up trying. And yet, they still wonder, is this my fault? Am I a bad kid for feeling this way? The answer, unequivocally, is no. This is not the story of an ungrateful child. This is the story of a teenager who has been emotionally neglected for years, gaslit into believing their pain is selfish, and forced to carry the emotional debris of a family who never made space for their humanity. The parents in this story aren't monsters, but they have failed, in serious ways. The dad, through passivity and absence. The mom, through emotional manipulation, denial, and control. The system around them, doctors, school, family, also seems to have failed to notice how much this child has been silently enduring. The fact that the narrator is questioning all of this, and even willing to write it out and share it, speaks to how deeply they want to understand themselves and how much they deserve better. Key themes. Parentification and emotional neglect. The narrator is expected to suppress their needs in favor of supporting their mother or avoiding conflict. Invalidation and shame. Feelings are dismissed or punished, leading to internalized guilt and shame about having emotional responses. Abandonment and rejection. Repeated attempts to connect with their father are met with rejection, creating lasting emotional wounds. Suppressed identity. The narrator struggles with whether they're allowed to feel hurt, or if doing so makes them ungrateful, a common result of emotional abuse. Resilience. Despite all of this, the narrator is still reflective, thoughtful, and deeply empathetic, a testament to their strength. If you're reading this and relating to any part of it, know this: your pain is real. Your experiences are valid. You are not too sensitive, too selfish, or too dramatic. Wanting to feel loved, seen, and supported is not a weakness. It's human. You are allowed to talk about your story. You are allowed to cry. And you are allowed to begin healing on your terms.